I'm so glad that you are all here. Oh, beautiful people. Hello. We're
Hello.
Hi, hi. We're so glad that you're here for Conscious Conversations, a program put on by the Virtual Practitioner Program in CSL. And it's just a lovely space to be able to be together and in this conversation. So today we have a great presentation from our wonderful practitioner, Karen Batten, who is part of our virtual practitioner program. She's also the phone team lead for World Ministry of Prayer. She has a bachelor's in physics and a master's in consciousness studies, and she's going to be leading us in this conversation today. And I know that it's going to be a really sweet time together. So thank you for being here. We do ask just some quick housekeeping things that folks keep themselves muted. There will be time to unmute and share as we go along and be in dialogue together, but just to help limit the Zoom background noise. And if you are having an issue with how to mute yourself, we can help you with that too. You're welcome to use the chat as we go along. If you want to share things into the chat, feel free. This is a space to connect. So
Oh, but cool.
I'm going to pass it on to our wonderful Karen. Thank you for being here.
And thank you for being here. Rebecca, if I miss some chats, please point them out to me or a hand because I know your Zoom account works differently than mine.
I definitely will. Yes, I definitely
Oh,
will.
better. Oh, much better. Thank you.
And I am gonna, and if folks aren't muted, I'm gonna go through and mute folks. Please don't take it personally. It's just to limit the Zoom noise, and you can unmute when we have times of sharing together.
Okay, so thank you for joining us today. I will start with my presentation. And let's see, wait. Give me a moment, please. Is that it? Huh. I'm not sure why it's not showing up. That's why. Somehow I apologize.
It's always a
Yeah.
little, navigating Zoom is always a fun thing. I'm sure you all have had your Zoom experiences.
Okay, it keeps shutting down. I don't know why.
Make sure your document is on your computer and then it will open up.
Right. And maybe I'll just do it this way. See if that works.
Yes, and while Karen is bringing that up, if folks want to write their name and where you're joining us from into the chat, we'd love to welcome you.
There we go.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so thank you again for joining us in this conversation. Most of our lives are lived through beliefs, opinions, interpretations, and subjective ideas. We think they're true, but they're not always true. So we'll start with a definition. A belief is, how do I close this? Is a state or a habit that we have confidence or reliance in placed in some person or thing. This is from Oxford Languages. I don't know if you can see the top line. I'm not able to see the top line. Beliefs are thoughts that we imagine. They're useful. They're not truth. They come from cultural, religious, political, personal, social. Everything that we think, everything that we are experiencing develops beliefs. They're influenced by our perceptions, and they influence our perceptions, our emotions, and our relationships, everything that we do. Some are rational, some are not. When we get on the freeway, we know we're going to reach the destination. That's a belief. And that's rational based on our past experience. But some are not rational. When we think we're unworthy, when we think we are separate, these aren't really rational. But all of them can be transcended. We ask ourselves, how reliable are these beliefs? The way we change them is by finding beliefs that are closer and closer to this reality, to this whole perfect reality that we are immersed in, that we are expressing, that we are a part of. And then at some point, we no longer have to remind ourselves of this belief, and we transcend it. It becomes a way of knowing, becomes a way of ruling our lives without even thinking about it. We do this. This is the way we grow, by finding a belief, and it no longer serves us. We find another one that's closer to reality. And then at some point, we've grown through it. And then we're able to release that belief and live in it. So how do we know things anyway? There are many, many different models. I like this one because it illustrates the different ways we know things in a logical way that it makes the point that I am making. One of the ways is senses. That's a bodily, a physical way of knowing. Embodiment is also a physical way of knowing, but it's an energy body. It's more of a spiritual than physically based. The intellect and intuition are through the mind. So these four ways of knowing are the way that we express and determine information. It is said that when these four ways of knowing are perfectly balanced, there's a fifth way of knowing where we transcend the senses, intellect, embodiment, and intuition. And they all work together. This is usually with something that that is one of our talents, something that was inborn.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So we'll go into each one of these ways of knowing a little bit. So the senses involve sight, sound, touch, smell, and taste. They give us the illusion of a direct interaction with the physical world. So we might remember elementary school when we learned that our eyes turn up the image that we see upside down, and then our brain interprets it. That's not really a direct interaction with the physical world. So sight is mediated by what we call electromagnetic waves. Sound is mediated by sound waves. The sound goes into our ears, and our ears respond, and the brain interprets what we hear. Now, even touch isn't a direct interaction with the physical world. When we touch something, there's a thin layer of air between our fingers, say, and whatever we're touching. So we're not really interacting with what we're touching. Everything that we experience from the physical world is mediated from our senses, and then we interpret it. And interpretation takes place in the intellect. And the intellect is where we reason, think, we make concepts, ideas, and beliefs. The intellect interprets and makes meaning. It places meaning on neutral things. For instance, what do you think of when you think of the color red? The objective description of red is it is an electromagnetic wave with a wavelength of 620 to 750 nanometers. That's it. That's the facts about light, about red. But historically, it's been associated with power and prestige. And in our culture, we associate it with anger, seeing red, heat, it's red hot, danger, high energy, fire trucks, and all kinds of different interpretations that really have nothing to do with this red wavelength of light. So the intellect places meaning on our senses, and the meaning that we place on it is influenced by culture, senses, memories. Everything that we take in influences the meaning we place on things. But senses and memory are sometimes faulty. Every time we recall a memory, it's temporarily vulnerable to modification or updates. We may introduce inaccuracies or distortions because every time we remember something, we're bringing in our current beliefs, our current emotions, and all the experiences we've had since the belief was formed. So our memory is influenced by our whatever has happened between the formation of the memory, the actual event, and our interpretations. Not to say that all memories are unreliable, just some of them. And as we saw, senses do not necessarily tell us what is true. Our senses can be faulty. Think about eyewitnesses to an accident. They all say the different things. I've often wondered if I see the same colors that you do. If I magically went into your mind, would I say red the same as you do? We don't really know because a lot of that is interpretation. I mean, certainly the contrast, the differences we recognize, but are they the same differences? The intellect is where we make choices. This is where we can decide to give up beliefs, to embrace new beliefs. So embodiment is the third on the list. It's the analog of the physical body, the spiritual analog. It seems to happen in the physical body. We experience it in the physical body, but no machine known can pick up those, anything that is evidence for it. I mean, certainly Kirlian photography suggests something's going on, but scientists believe it is due to the moisture. The things, I don't know if everybody knows what Kirlian photography is, but there was a time when people were thinking that it was evidence of the energy body, the subtle body, that which connects us to our intuition in a different way. But scientists are split. Most of them do not believe that it is evidence of the subtle body. Embodiment can be felt as something called God bumps. You ever notice when you feel the truth in your body? It's that feeling in the body of being grounded. That's embodiment. We can notice this subtle body in different ways. Try this. Think of a decision that you have to make. Doesn't have to be a big one. Just think of a decision. Now imagine one choice, and pay attention to what's going on in your body. Is the energy flowing freely, or is it going in fits and stops? If it's going in fits and stops, that's the body's way of saying, no, not that one. If it's flowing, then that's the right choice. I've done this method before, and I'll tell you, my body was just so sluggish, I could barely move on the wrong ones. I think you get more as you practice this discernment, you get more and more in touch with it. But embodiment doesn't really offer any specific information like intuition does. So embodiment is the wisdom of the body. Intuition is the wisdom of the mind. Intuition is experienced in the mind, and it's experienced as guidance, maybe a feeling, a word, a sentence, even a paragraph. And like I said in the beginning, when all ways of knowing are balanced, we have a fifth way of knowing. Emotions aren't on the list. Did you notice that? Emotions originate in the intellect. They're reactions to our thinking, to the interpretations we made, to conditioning. And often emotions are an evaluation, and we evaluate the emotions. Some feel bad, some feel good. But really, the only thing emotions can give us gives us information about our psyches. And that is really valuable information when we're looking to change beliefs. But emotions don't give us any information about the world. So when have you touched the fifth way of knowing? I'll give you an example. When I was a physics student, I loved doing physics problems, math problems. They flowed. It was like a meditation. I felt it in my body. I felt it intuitively, intellectually, and I don't know if I felt it in my senses, but I believe that is probably what they're talking about with the fifth way of knowing. Because I have a talent for math. It was easy. It flowed. So do you remember a time when you tapped into this fifth way of knowing, when everything, the senses, the intellect, embodiment and intuition were in sync. Or do you have any questions about what has come up so far or comments? Oh, thank you, Rebecca.
If you'd like to share, at the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a raise hand function, or it might be under reactions if it's not on its own, and you can click raise hand or share into the chat and we'll read it out.
Any,
I see David.
David, thank you.
So where do you put mystical experiences?
Those would be an intuition. And then, of course, we interpret it. It might be embodiment. And then we interpret it in the intellect. I mean, remember, this is a model, and models tend to separate, but they're useful. They're not necessarily a reflection of exactly what's happening. We separate them to make it easy to talk about them. Does that make sense?
It does. And
I like this
thank you
model.
for bringing up that that's a mere model. We sometimes confuse the map for the real thing.
Oh, right. And when we get to religion, I'll be talking about that. Mara?
Yes,
How do you
that's me.
say your name?
Mara David.
Mara.
Yep. I just had a question about emotions. So I guess from the psychological perspective, we're healthy. We're taught to be a healthy adult by processing our emotions and not, not holding them in, validating yourself. So I was wondering, I guess from the spiritual perspective, because the way you presented emotions to me felt like don't pay so much attention to them because they're not necessarily based on reality per se. They're more of a reaction to a thought that you're having. And so I just wanted to ask you, where do you think emotions have a place in terms of their validity and how much you pay attention to them in spiritual practice?
They're pointers. They point us to what we are thinking. So if we have an emotion, say, I'm sad, well, where does that come from? Oh, because I feel like people are picking on me. Well, what's that belief about? So the intellect and the emotions work together to point us to our beliefs. And then when we know our beliefs, we can change them. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So I hear you saying that the emotions help you understand what you're thinking so that you may change that thinking if it doesn't serve you in a way that helps you live a powerful life, is what I'm hearing, basically.
Right.
Okay.
Exactly. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll take two more and then we'll move on. Buffy,
Good morning.
good morning. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. This is intriguing. I think I experience the fifth way of knowing when I'm making art, when I'm deep in the process of, I don't know where this idea came from. I don't even know where I'm going with it, but I think I'll grab that and I'll use this and I'll do that. And it's all very intuitive and it sometimes surprises me where I'm going, but other times I already saw the finished product and now I just need to do it. But I'm never in the, oh, this isn't right. I don't, it's just this, then this, then this. Oh, I'll try this.
Yep.
It's all just this lovely flow.
Right. You've transcended
Yes.
those beliefs and you've unified them.
Yes.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Joni?
Well, I don't know if this quite answers your question, but recently I decided to change my CSL and I started attending Awakening Ways in Atascadero, California. And so sometimes on Zoom and sometimes in person, and I wanted to become a part of the community. So my intellect was saying, well, I've got to do something. I want to become a part. And the minister was being ordained. She was actually ordained years ago during the pandemic. So they were finally acknowledging publicly the ordination. And she invited me to go to it. So I went, and there was a catered lunch afterwards. And everybody was saving seats first. And it was a rainy day. So people were putting down umbrellas and things. And so I went up to a table, and my intuition said, no, this isn't the right table. Nobody was sitting there. So I looked around the room and I saw another table, and it just called to me. So that to me is like totally intuition. And I went and I reserved a spot, and I went and got my food, and I came back, and who was sitting there but the choir? And 20 some years ago, I had been in a unity and a religious science choir. And I love to sing. Don't think I'm very good at it, but I love to sing. And who am I sitting next to but the band choir leader? And I told him about my desire, and he said, well, we'd love to have you. And I was complimenting his singing because he has a wide range, and he does a soprano line that I didn't think was coming from a man. And I'm looking for female mouths to move, and nobody's was moving. And I finally figured out it was him. And after that, I said, oh, by the way, I'm a tenor. And his mouth kind of fell open, and he said, this was on a Saturday, just 2 days before it was choir practice. And he had just said, I'm tired of being the only tenor, because he can sing all parts, but he has to sing tenor because there's no others. He said, so we set the intention that we would have a tenor join our group. And there I am 2 days later. So to me, this was total, it was a blending. I wanted to belong. That was my emotions. It was the intellect. I need to go and put myself out there to be a part of it. It was intuition. It was just everything all blended. Not to mention it was divine order. It was law of attraction. It was like a zillion principles all rolled into one. And it's marvelous. I love it. Tomorrow is my third performance.
Yay, yay. Thank you for sharing. So somebody asked, could I say where this model came from? I took a class with Christian De Quincey a few summers ago called Mind in the Cosmos. And he references it. Arthur Young also references it. I'm not sure who the creator was to begin with, but there are several different kinds of models about it. So let's continue. Oh boy. So what's the difference between a fact and a belief? We treat our beliefs as if they were facts. But facts are really objective, verifiable, and supported by evidence and consensus. The reason I say consensus is that we have decided that a foot is 12 inches. We have a ruler that we can measure it. So when we refer to a measurement, that's objective, verifiable. It doesn't matter where you are. This fact remains the same. But science is considered factual, but it's really a belief. It's a belief to take that objective and verifiable evidence, those measurements, and interpret it. There's always conversations in science. They don't all agree. So science is really a belief, as William James says, to accept objective evidence and build on it. Now, different levels and perspectives yield different facts. For instance, and now we're going into intuition. On a spiritual level, we are eternal. But on this physical level, we are bodies. We are born and we die. So which one is true? Well, it's relative, isn't it? Now, there's a lot of things coming out about placebos that are really interesting. A researcher named Ted Kapuchnik or something like that, he did an experiment where he had a drink that was in reality low fat, but he labeled it high fat, and he had participants take it. They believed it was high fat, and believe it or not, their bodies produced the metabolites as if they had actually drank a high fat drink, and it was low fat. It doesn't even matter if people know that they're being given a sugar pill. That's what a placebo is. It's a pill or a treatment or something that we believe to be true, so much so that we respond to it in a physical way. So another research that he did, another study that he did, he gave people max salt. He gave them a sugar pill and told them it was max salt, but really it's a sugar pill. They explained how it worked, how placebos worked. And 60% of these people responded to it. They don't even need it. They didn't even need to actually put complete belief in it. So beliefs are really powerful. If you think about the separation and how we believe that we are separate individual people when we are really joined, beliefs are really, really powerful. So how beliefs are formed? We form beliefs from stories that we tell ourselves, and these stories come from our past, from our experiences, from what people say, from our culture. And then we make rituals to reinforce them. A ritual may be after I remember a ritual I used to have. Every time I was in a group of people, I would have to analyze everything I said and whether it was appropriate or not. That was my ritual to consolidate the idea that I was not worthy. And somehow, by working with beliefs, I've managed to release that. Beliefs are formed from our cognitive processes. The brain receives sensory info from the environment, and then it's processed, interpreted, and filtered through existing frameworks, biases, and previous experiences. And various brain regions are involved in forming beliefs. The reasoning center, the prefrontal cortex, the part of the brain that is responsible for logic. The limbic system, our emotions get involved. The brain doesn't remember everything, though. It can't. So what we do is we fill in the blanks. Yet the brain doesn't tell us that we forgot. And it fills in these blanks without letting us know. And so we trust our memory, we trust our beliefs. Religious beliefs and political beliefs, research shows that they are processed in different parts of the brain. Religious beliefs are more likely to be processed associated with the reward, emotion, moral decision-making centers. And political beliefs are more likely to be processed in cognitive evaluation and reasoning centers in the prefrontal cortex. Emotions are also a factor in how we create our beliefs. When we're highly emotional, we remember things that happened. And remember, that's how we form our beliefs. I mean, all of us, if we were alive, remembered where we were on 9/11. Emotions affect the strength and the resilience of our beliefs. The more emotionally invested we are in it, the more we'll rationalize or contradict or dismiss contradictory evidence. And beliefs depend on our moods. When we're feeling good, we're more likely to form beliefs that are optimistic. And when we're feeling poor, they're more likely to be pessimistic. People identify with groups that share their beliefs. Being with people who share them strengthens them. And when we're in a group, the out group is viewed as more negatively and the in group as more positively. Our brains have the natural tendency to seek out information that supports our views, that supports our beliefs, while ignoring evidence against them. This is called confirmation bias. High levels of dopamine promote a positive attitude towards new info. Low levels are correlated with rejecting new information and new beliefs. And repetition, when we repeat a belief, it gets stronger. That's why affirmations are so powerful. A belief repeated makes neural pathways, and it makes it easier for us to recall that belief again and to put it into practice. The purpose of belief, it gives us a sense of continuity, safety. We don't wake up with new beliefs. We don't wake up with a new past. Our beliefs hold us together, shapes our sense of right and wrong, guides our behavior. It serves as a moral compass. Beliefs also reduce uncertainty. There's very little that is certain about this life. So we use beliefs so that we are certain, to comfort ourselves, so that we know what to predict. Beliefs also create a personal and social identity. And they serve as a framework for navigating the world. This is why, all of these reasons are why when someone challenges our beliefs, we feel threatened. They're threatening the way we see the world, the thing that we've relied on to navigate through the world. But beliefs can evaporate in an instant. So I will tell you a story and then ask you for yours. We'll go for about 5 minutes though. I was in the Canadian Rockies and I had been reading stories about grizzly bears. We were camping in a van and the van started rocking and I heard this I was convinced there was a bear out there wanting to get in that was rocking our bear, was rocking the van. We had windows, the windows were covered so I couldn't see outside. I was convinced, I even convinced my husband, my late husband, that there was a bear out there wanting to get into the van. And then I heard raindrops. Oh, it was the wind going through the luggage racks. the wind shaking the van. There was no bear out there. That's how my belief, a very short belief, changed in an instant. So do you have a story where a belief changed in an instant? Or do you have anything, comments or questions about these purpose of beliefs? Or how they are created? Questions or comments?
I think someone physically has the hand raised under the name John Mays.
Okay, John, I don't see you, but please, I would love to hear from you.
Hi, my name is Irene, and I was greatly influenced by my mother. I was the youngest of four, and she was an immigrant from Greece, and she hated Jews. And actually, I think she hated anybody who wasn't Greek. And so I was influenced by her religious belief that that the Jews had crucified Christ. And I, just had this kind of prejudice, as a kid against the Jews, thinking that she was right. And then I read the diary of Anne Frank. And I remember being on the bus, reading the last chapter of that bus, on that bus, and I was weeping. And at that instant, I stopped hating the Jews or distrusting them or believing this garbage that they had crucified Christ, And
That's
it was a
beautiful.
profound moment for me. That's of a new belief, of a new. She wasn't right, My mother was not right about that belief.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing. I love that. Anyone else? Any comments, questions?
And as a reminder, you can find the raise hand function usually at the bottom of your Zoom screen.
Joni.
Well, I had a kind of a little bit similar to Irene, but not quite the same. I come from a Jewish family, and that didn't really practice, and we never really studied. And I was in the back of the family car. I must have been about 12 or 13. We did go High Holy Days. That's like pretty much the only time we went to temple. And it was Yom Kippur, known as the Day of Atonement, or I now say at one mint. And I decided for the first time I was going to fast like the adults fast. And that just kind of added to my experience, I think. And we were driving down the city street in Philadelphia, and there was an interracial couple walking along the sidewalk. And my father said, "Look at that, vanilla fudge." And I was shocked. And I don't know that I held a belief before that. And then my mother, who was very meek, mild, surprised me. And she said something like, "What will their children be?" And I think she said vanilla fudge. And it made my blood curdle. I just knew in my heart of hearts that that was wrong. And so that was my first closely held belief, that any kind of prejudice is just not right. We need to be accepting of everybody. And to this day, I mean, when I taught, I used teaching tolerance from Southern Poverty Law Center, which now they've changed the name because tolerance implies I'm superior to you. So they've changed the name, and I've contributed to them for decades. They're in my will. It just has always been something that I've held. It was a very strong experience for me as well. Very powerful.
Okay, thank you. I'll take one more, and then we need to move on. Renee? Or wait, Glenda's next, I think.
Yes.
I'm sorry, Renee.
Hi.
Hi, welcome.
When I was younger, my dad was raised by a very prejudiced father, and we were in Mackinac, Michigan, and there was a Native American man who was obviously really drunk and hanging out on the street. My dad said something about, Native Americans are only drunks, nothing good comes from Native Americans. And then I got to find out what the real history of Native Americans are. And it's like, honest to God, I found out that I'm Iroquois.
Interesting.
Okay.
Interesting.
I think I could leave that belief behind.
Thank you for sharing. So we'll move on now. I'm sorry I couldn't get to everybody. So spiritual and religious beliefs are really interesting. All of them are an answer to the belief in separation, to the belief that we are not part of reality. We are not interconnected, that we are on our own. We're thrown into this world in separate bodies, separate minds. That's what the belief of separation is. And yet, it's not true. So religion and spiritual practices and dogma and traditions, they're all aimed at this belief that we aren't who we are. None of them are actually wrong or right. Each of them are looking at a different slice of reality. And reality isn't a concept. It's not a belief. It's an experience. So we really can't make concepts out of it. Therefore, they are pointers. Practices point us to reality. Teachings point us to reality. They can't describe it. There's stories about reality. And yet, people have gone to war over these pointers. It really doesn't make sense to be that invested in a belief. There's a concept from Buddhism called upaya. It says that all beliefs are true and they're false. They're true, they're only models. They model reality so that we can approach it, so that we can be pointed to it. If it works for you, then it's true. If it doesn't work for you, it's not. And of course, beliefs change as we grow. We might grow up in one religion and change to another spiritual tradition and change to another one. They're useful. They point. So someone on Reddit wrote this, and I thought this was really deep. Seeking is futile, but realizing seeking is futile is important. To realize this, you need to seek. In other words, beliefs are useful. We don't really need to seek with that which is here right now. But to realize that is here right now, we need to look for it. We need these pointers. We need these traditions. We need these beliefs. And then we realize that, hey, it's here right now. We don't need to seek for it. We carry this peace, this joy, this harmony, this complete and wholeness with us because it is us. So what is the self? Hinduism Vedic scripture tells us that the self is all there is and we are expressions of it. Buddhism tells we're no self. We are empty of existence because we are interconnected. Nothing stands on its own. I think they're saying the same thing. The self we think we are is just a pile of beliefs. We're conditioned to believe in that self. And then we attach to it. We think it is us. We identify with it. But it's not a permanent self. It's constantly changing. And who you are is not changing. It is changeless. It's eternal. It isn't temporary. It's peace. It's whole. It's complete. So growth is a process of releasing each belief that we have in separation. Forgiveness is huge. When we forgive, we release the belief that someone did something wrong. Forgiveness is realizing that no one actually did anything wrong at all, that it's all part of life. And I like the idea that we are one being with different perspectives. So we aren't our thoughts. We aren't our inner narration. We aren't the personality. That's just something we experience. That's just a feeling experience. We don't have to identify with it. The truth of us is beyond description. So how do we transcend beliefs? How do we cultivate this perspective, this perception? Cultivate an open mind. Loosen our grip, our clinging, our identification with the beliefs that we have. Practice self-reflection and self-inquiry. Journal. Ask ourselves, what is behind this emotion? Embrace uncertainty and paradox, because reality has paradoxes, seeming contradictory things going on. And then when we dialogue and debate with people who have different beliefs, it's another way of opening our minds. So rather than dogma, trust our experience. That's the intuition. Rather than interpreting, just let things be exactly as they are right now and experience. Another way we can transcend beliefs is by self-talk, by talking ourselves out of the belief and coming up with a belief that is closer to reality. And like I said earlier, once our beliefs are closest to reality, are close enough to reality, somehow we transcend them. And intuition takes over and we no longer have to remind ourselves that this is a belief we are working on. So what can you add to the list? We have 2 minutes. Glenda. You're muted still.
Wow, my hand was just left up there. I didn't.
Oh, it was still up there? Okay. So what?
You let other people talk. I'll take it off.
I think practitioner sessions can be helpful. This is Mara Davis. I think that
Thank you.
sessions can be helpful in terms of going to a practitioner and
Mhm.
asking to help you with limited beliefs and challenging those to see a different reality.
That's very true. Other people really can point out, especially practitioners, can point out, can lead you through that process of transcending beliefs. Self-forgiveness, yes. Anyone else?
I'm
Any
sorry, I didn't raise
comments?
I didn't raise my hand. I don't mean to zoom home, but nobody else spoke up. I just had like this amazing aha moment when you were saying that we're nothing. And the reason why I follow that, and in my meditation, the Guru Dev Sri Sri Ravi Shankar says, I want nothing, I do nothing, I am nothing. And I could never quite grasp that until you made the connection that since we're energy, we're all connected. So alone, we don't stand alone. So that's why we're nothing. I never got why he says I am nothing. And I was like, oh my God, my mind is blown this morning. Thank you so much, dear Karen.
Oh, I'm really grateful that I could open that door. So I'll just get to the last slide then. And I was going to do a meditation, but we're running out of time. So if you would like to contact the virtual practitioner program for any reason, here's Rebecca's. Rebecca is the lead practitioner and she would be the one you'd contact. And if you'd like to continue the conversation, that's my address.
Thank you, dear Karen. This was really a rich conversation. Much love.
Thank you. Thank you. And thank you everyone for joining us. We have these every month. The next one will be on July 13th. Is that it, Rebecca?
It is, yes. It's normally the first Saturday of the month, but because of the United States 4th of July holiday weekend, the July one is on the 13th. Yes, be on the lookout in your email and the newsletter, the CSL newsletter, for invitations to that. Well, let's give Karen some more love. That was really, like, truly thought-provoking. It was incredible.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, everybody. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Thank you for joining me. Thank you for joining us. I really enjoyed your input.